In the last stream, we were working our way through the technological revolution questline, beginning with some new mechanism machines and working our way up to this fission reactor right here. And right at the end of the last episode, we got some fissile fuel burning inside of the fission reactor to produce both steam, which we are deleting, and to produce nuclear waste. That nuclear waste is what we are then processing via our solar neutron activator to produce polonium. And this polonium right here is what we need quite a large amount of in order to make the supercritical phase shifter, which is one of the things we're going to do in today's stream. And then once we have that supercritical phase shifter, we can use that to produce antimatter. And that antimatter is what we're after. This is the whole point of this quest line, and it's the end goal that we're looking to produce here. So to do that, we're going to need a lot more nuclear waste and a lot more polonium, but unfortunately not polonium pellets, because if we look at the recipe for antimatter right here, the antimatter is made by crystallizing the antimatter liquid, and as we saw in the last episode, this can be made in the supercritical phase shifter using this kind of liquid or gaseous polonium. This we get, as we saw before, by using nuclear waste, and the nuclear waste we make using our fission reactor. And so if we're going to get a decent amount of antimatter, we are going to need a much larger fission reactor to make that happen. And in turn, we're also going to want to get a much larger dynamic tank so that it can produce, or I should say hold, a lot more water that we can then transfer very quickly using the creative fluid pipe that we have right here to move basically infinite water out of this tank into the fission reactor. We just need to make sure that there's enough water in here to be moved, because right now we only have 43 million millibuckets, and this thing can move over 2 billion millibuckets, as you can see at the top there, every tick. And so we're going to build a much bigger tank and a much bigger reactor. None of that should be too difficult. All of the items involved in making the fission reactor are EMCable. The reactor casing, the reactor glass, and of course the fuel rods and fuel control rods at the top, all EMCable. So making that bigger, not going to be a problem for us. And then as far as processing it goes, that also shouldn't be too difficult either. We are going to have to make more solar neutron activators, but they are EMCable, and we could potentially look at making some speed and energy upgrades for our pressurized reaction chamber here. These, again, are EMCable, so we only have to make them once. These not only increase the speed at which the machine runs, but if you combine them with the energy upgrades, that's going to reduce the energy cost to actually make this work as well. One other thing we do have to bear in mind if we're going to make a lot of antimatter is that making antimatter is very expensive from a power standpoint. As you can see here, for every one of these supercharged coils that you put into the supercritical phase shifter, the setup uses 400 million FE per tick. And that's kind of the least it can use. You can feed it less, but it will go slower, and you can feed it more and it will go faster. And again, this is only to make 1 millibucket. We need 1,000 millibuckets to make one piece of antimatter. So we really do want a lot of power to make a lot of antimatter somewhat quickly, and that's where yet another quest in this quest line comes into play, and that is the Nitro reactor from the power mod. There are a couple of alternatives here. We could, if we wanted to, take the steam out of this fission reactor, and instead of deleting it, we could pump it into a turbine, and that turbine would spin and produce power. We could also look at setting up the fusion reactor from Mechanism as well, which can also be used to generate large amounts of power. But the Nitro reactor here is, I think, going to be far and away the easiest for us to set up, because all of these items have an EMC value, and even more importantly, the Nitro reactor itself has a fairly low, in the grand scheme of things, EMC value, and these are going to be very easy to scale. We can put down a ton of them and produce millions and millions of redstone flux very easily. And I've also been told that they do work with the Watch of Flowing Time here, so we could even accelerate that even further to produce tens, if not hundreds of millions of redstone flux, hopefully fairly easily. So to get the Nitro reactor here, we need polonium, which we of course already have. We EMC'd it in the last stream, along with 4 nitro capacitors and 1 uraninite. Uraninite is also the fuel that these reactors run on. Thankfully, it's super easy to make. We just need 1 uranium ingot, which we can grab and drop into our energizing orb. That should turn it into a uraninite, and then we can put it into our tablet to get an unlimited amount of it. As far as the nitro capacitors are concerned, these are made in a very similar way to all of the previous capacitors that we saw in a previous episode. And to make it, we just need 4 nitro crystals with some more dielectric paste and a large basic capacitor. The nitro crystals here are, again, you guessed it, made in the energizing orb, this time with 1 nether star, 2 blocks of redstone, and 1 block of blazing crystal. We don't have the blocks of blazing crystal taught, but we do have unlimited blazing crystals, and so we can teach that very easily, at which point we should then be able to grab a stack of those, as well as a stack of redstone, and a stack of nether stars. We don't actually need this many of them. In fact, we only need this. 1, 2, 3, and 4. That should be done pretty quickly. We've done much more expensive recipes using this energizing orb, and of course, at that point, the nitro crystals do have an EMC value, and so once this is done, we are pretty much good to go on building really as many nitro reactors as we like. So we'll take these, and then let's see if we can't make this happen. That should be everything for the nitro capacitor. It is, and there should be everything for our reactor. It is perfect. So you need 36 of these in order to build 1 nitro reactor. Now, the question really is, where do I want to put these? Also, I should mention, I completely forgot to mention it in the last episode, but 2 episodes ago, we got our new creative world shaper, this guy right here, and I used it right at the end of an episode to try and build a sphere. The game crashed, but then it did let me relog back into the game, and when I relogged back in, this sphere was here. So we do have a sphere just kind of hanging around here. It is fully dense, apparently, and not really that useful for us. I might end up taking it down at some point, but I guess we could also just leave it where it is as well, and that's kind of just hanging around there doing its thing. But now we could look at putting these down. If you right-click, it should automatically take the 36 required out of your inventory and just build the multi-block structure. And then from there, to get this running, the only thing you need is uraninite, but there are a few other things that you can provide to the reactor to make it produce more power. So right away, if I put the uraninite in, this is going to start producing 290,000 redstone flux per tick. We can not turn this off, I don't think. No, I think we have to leave it on, right? But yeah, 290,000 redstone flux per tick, which of course is already way more than we produce down here, like orders of magnitude more, right? We produce 50,000, maybe, RF per tick here. So already we are quintupling the amount of power in a much smaller form factor, but you can take it even further if you add redstone and coal to these slots here and here. That's going to further increase the amount that can be produced. And then you can also add ice as well to the reactor to even further decrease the core temperature and thus increase the amount of fuel that can be burned, increasing the power production. We don't currently have any ice available to us. However, we should be able to make some. Did we teach our system snowballs? We did. Fantastic. So we can do something like this to get blocks of snow, and then we can use those blocks of snow either in a pressure chamber, but more easily in a mana pool to get ice. And so if I just drop this in over here, we can then teach this to our system, and then we should be able to very quickly craft that up from regular ice to packed ice, and from packed ice to blue ice. And once we have blue ice, this is the second best option that you can put into the coolant slot, I believe. You can take it one step further, and you could use dry ice. Dry ice, unfortunately, though, doesn't have an EMC value, and so it would be much trickier to automate. I don't think that the extra work is worth the tiny amount of extra power that you would generate from this reactor. And so dropping that in there is going to even further increase the power production capabilities. And so now if we put more uraninite in here, it's going to produce even more power. The reactor does produce less and less power as the stored energy fills up, and that's why the amount that's being generated is going down currently. If we had some kind of battery to store the power in, we would be able to see kind of the maximum production rate here. I do believe we might be able to make some of the energy cubes here from mechanism, because I think it's almost certainly just going to be a case of shift clicking in each of the different tiers. All of the tiers do require the previous tiers, but this highest tier can hold 100 million FE, which is actually not that much because we've already got 200 million FE inside of this reactor. And so I think even if I put this down here, that's going to fill up and not even break a sweat inside of the Nitro reactor, which is absolute madness. And so essentially what I'm going to do, you can also put coolant in here, by the way. You can put water in. The water doesn't get used, but again, does increase the power output, which is definitely something we will look at doing. But essentially what I think I'm going to do, I'm going to probably tear this down, and I'm going to also probably tear down the reactor downstairs, because I don't really think there's much point in keeping this around when we can instead just place down a bunch of nitro reactors in its place that are going to produce just a ton more power. And then once we've done that, I'll also look at making this reactor here much bigger as well. All right, so quite a bit of building later. We now have a much larger fission reactor here. I was contemplating actually building it bigger, but it turns out there is a max size limit. So the max size limit is 18 by 18 by apparently 19 tall. But at the very least, it's 18 by 18 by 18. I can't confirm or deny the 19 tall, but that's what Twitch chat has told me. And the same is true for this tank as well, by the way. We tried initially building it a little bit wider. That would have made it 19 wide. That's not allowed, so this is currently 17 wide, just to make it symmetrical. But in theory, we could make it one wider. We could, of course, make this a lot deeper. I'm not quite sure how big we need this dynamic tank to be, though. And so for now, it is this current size. The reason I've set it up like this is that I still wanted to be able to use the elevator. And if we built the reactor below the tank, then I would be able to use this elevator. So I've kind of raised it up a bit and placed it above the tank here. And it should be pretty much good to go. If we grab some more of the reprocessed fissile fragments here and we whack those into the chemical oxidizer, that's going to once again produce more fissile fuel for us. As before, it should automatically be placed into the fuel tank. Everything else here I think is set up. We've got our pipe over here with the pipe upgrade pumping up, of course, into the coolant port. Over here, we have our pressurized tube coming out of the nuclear waste port down into the solar neutron activator. And over here, this is also set up with the ultimate trash can. I don't know if you can just put the ultimate trash can on the port itself. And if that does work, we might want to move it over because I don't know if we're going to be able to move enough steam with just this one pressurized tubing, but we can give that a try in just a second. We do, of course, have to put power onto this guy, that is for sure. And let's see. So initially, this is currently set to 0.1 millibuckets per tick, which is not very much at all. You know, we've got more than enough capacity to run that. That's fine. Our max burn rate now is that 1,125 millibuckets per tick? It is. That's crazy. Because I feel like before our max rate was like maybe 20 millibuckets per tick. One thing I have done differently this time around is I have completely filled this reactor with fuel rods. Before we had kind of a crisscross pattern, similar to what we had with our big reactor on the lower level, but this time I've just filled it completely. There is no space at all inside of the reactor. And so I don't think we should jump straight to 1,125. That might be crazy, but let's try 50 millibuckets per tick. And if I click activate, there are a few things we need to check. Those things are, I mean, immediately that's way faster than we're producing the fissile fuel because we've burned through all of it almost immediately there, which is madness because obviously 50 millibuckets per tick is 1,000 millibuckets per second. So that's 2 seconds to get rid of a full reprocessed fissile fragment there. So that's pretty good. I don't actually know what happened there because I don't know where. Oh, the polonium's here. I see. Okay, so we did get some polonium. We of course don't actually want, I don't think, to put the polonium in here. We've done it now, and that's not ideal because I don't know if we can take it out. I think we could take it out. We could put it into some kind of canister, but we really want to save that polonium and then use it for the supercritical phase shifter. So it might not be a bad idea, actually, for us to get a chemical tank, like a high-tier chemical tank. Although, actually, I don't know if we can get it out of here. What I'm going to do, I'm going to get another bucket's worth in here. We'll make another polonium, and then we'll change this up so that it goes into a chemical tank. The chemical tank, much like the regular tank, comes in different versions. We have the basic, but we can, of course, upgrade that to the advanced, and then to the elite, and then, of course, finally, to the ultimate as well. There we go. And this guy here can hold quite a lot, 8.192 million millibuckets, or 8,192 buckets worth of polonium, which I think should be fine. And so real quick, let me throw a few more in here. We need to throw in 1, 2, 3, 4 more of those to get 1,000 millibuckets of polonium. We'll then use our fluorite, of course, and a bucket of water to allow us to actually make this happen. Not that. Like that. That should hopefully make us one more polonium, which of course we don't need to make, but I'm going to make it just so we can get this out of here, because if I break this PRC with the polonium in it, that's when radiation happens, which is not ideal. So let me get this taut, of course, and let's also grab another one of those out. Fantastic. It should not take too long, of course, as soon as we turn this on, for that to burn through all of this fuel. In fact, we could do a quick test here. Let me try doubling that to 100 millibuckets per tick. It does get a little hot. It's kind of hard to tell because it all happens so fast. It does get pretty hot. It gets too hot, actually. We can tell here, because the damage is at 2%, that's going too far. We can't do 100 millibuckets per tick. I'm going to lower it back down to 50. The amount that we can do is probably somewhere between the two numbers. We didn't actually lose any water, so I don't know if that's a problem with our cooling capability or if it's just a problem with the fact that I've crammed so many of these fuel rods into here. We could maybe take some of those out to try and lessen that, potentially. But let's have a look. Down here, we should be... Have I miscalculated? I thought I had enough there, although it's possible. Yes, that these are not all done yet. That makes sense. Not enough energy to operate. That also makes sense because down here, we're not actually making any power anymore. So I have gone ahead and placed down a bunch of these Nitro reactors. And so the plan down here, if we take a quick detour, is going to be to grab some EMC links. We don't have to use the final EMC links, but there's no reason not to. These can provide infinity number of items per second, which of course is far too many. But the plan here is essentially going to be to just make 3 of these, 1 for coal, 1 for redstone, and 1 for ice. In fact, I think we might even be able to make 1 for water as well, although the Evertide Amulet would also do the exact same thing there. And so let me grab the item pipes. Just for the sake of symmetry here, I'm going to put 1 here, here, and here. We're then going to put an EMC link here, here, here. Oh no, we do need 4 actually, because we need 1 for the uraninite as well. That one I'm going to put down, let's say, right here at the front, like that. And then essentially the plan here is just going to be to connect all these up like this. I might do some configuring. It's very much so not necessary, but I might do something like this and like this, just to make it look a little bit nicer. It doesn't matter at all, by the way, where this connects, so this is not necessary at all. We will set this to extract. We could also put a high tier pipe upgrade into there. Again, I don't think the ultimate pipe upgrade is strictly necessary, but it is the fastest that we can EMC, so I feel like we might as well. And then the plan is going to be to just right click something like redstone onto this guy right here, boom, and that should immediately start to provide this with redstone. It does. And then we're just going to do the same thing, of course, all the way over here. That's going to provide, let's say, coal, and then this one over here can provide the ice. We want to make sure that all of these are set to extract, and to extract, and to extract. And then the final piece of the puzzle is just connecting these up. If we just do something like this and like this, that should allow these item pipes to distribute all of the items to all of the reactors. You'll see already these are all full of redstone. Fantastic. If we do something like this, that's going to start to provide all of the uraninite. Again, something like this is going to make it happen almost instantaneously, which is good. And then finally, we just need some coal, which again, having issues with the simple storage network, let's get it out of here, as well as some blue ice from here as well. And then we'll do this and this. Cool. So that should provide all of those with all the stuff they need. Of course, if we do one of these and one of these, that's going to happen much, much faster. And then you can pull a fluid from an EMC link. So we could do that. And the chat is actually right in that we could, if we wanted to, make a universal pipe here from the pipes mod. This is a pipe that can move energy, items, and fluids all at the same time. And so if we were to replace these with a universal pipe, then potentially we could also do something. This is not going to be symmetrical, which is going to annoy me. But if we put one, let's say here and here, can I make this water buckets? And then can I then set this to extract and have these fill with water? Actually, I'm being a fool because that isn't necessary because we don't actually need to provide water. The water only needs to go in once. So if we just take the bucket of water and right click it on here, the water's going to go in. I'm fairly certain the water is then not used going forward. I don't know if we can do that with the Evertide Amulet. Can I just like right click? I totally can. Fantastic. So the water does not need to be perpetually pumped in. So item pipes here are in fact fine. If we do this, they should all now be producing basically the maximum amount of power that they can be producing. And because we have so much EMC coming in and so little EMC going out, all of these should just continue to work basically forever. And then the final piece of the puzzle, of course, is going to be grabbing a flux plug. I say one flux plug. We probably do need to get many flux plugs and making sure that all of these guys are connected. Thankfully, they can share flux plugs like this. Let's put one here. And actually, it depends on how stingy we want to be, because in theory, we don't actually need any for those 4. I could put one here, one here. And then we could also put one here, and then I guess at that point we'd also need like one here, one here, and one here. It's a bit of a janky setup, but the outcome is the same. Let me grab my flux configurator, and then let's make sure that all of these are set to our network. And so now we should be able to send all of the power that we're generating from all of these reactors to all of the places we need to go. Of course, right now, that does not matter at all. This will only really become useful once we get that supercritical phase shifter up and running, so we can actually use all of this power for making the antimatter. But for now, if we head back up here, that should be sending power around to this guy. It is indeed. And over here, we should now have polonium. We do. Cool. So let me double check that there's nothing in there. There isn't. Then let's take this out, get rid of this. Also get rid of this and this for now. And let's put down our chemical tank right here. That should now be fine. And we should be somewhat safe to put our reprocessed fissile fragments into here. One thing I am going to do, as we mentioned earlier in the episode, is I am going to look at making these energy and speed upgrades. In order to make these, we need atomic alloys, glass, and then osmium dust and gold dust. In fact, I think we already have both osmium and gold dust from the last episode, and so we should already have everything we need. Perfect. You can put a maximum of 8 upgrades into any one machine. That's 8 speed and 8 energy. And to do that, shift right click, and in here, in the upgrades tab, we can now see that this machine is now fully sped up. And if I put in the fissile fragments, we can see those are being processed much, much faster. And this is already on. Perfect. They are going in faster than they're being used, but that is completely fine. Right now, this looks pretty good. And I'm just going to leave that to run for just a second here. In fact, we can just leave that running. I think that's fine. The fact that this looks like it's doing okay, the water is, oh, whoops. Nope. Scram. Stop. Why am I just right clicked. Why did it? That's horrendous. Okay, so if you're, don't shift. So I was shifting to fly down. I was holding shift to lower myself. And as I did that, I carry on to the tank. So maybe just stay further away from the tank. Gosh, that's horrendous. Okay, right. The pipe needs reconnecting. Let me get my wrench out. We also could do with that freaking piece of stuff bank, which I don't think I can get to without breaking these things here. That's not ideal. Okay, so that is a good reason as to why we don't do that. All right, this is one of those situations where I do need my extendo grip, like this and like this. We should now be back online, putting water into here. I should be able to reactivate that, and so long as we don't shift click anything, things should be fine, and we should just be producing the polonium, which hopefully is then going into here. This is set to input on the back. You set to output on the front. You are set to output on the front. Can I not store? I might not be able to store the polonium in here, actually. The polonium is radioactive. There's a non-zero chance that the polonium might need to be stored. I'm going to click scram here real quick because I don't want to back up on it. But I think there's a non-zero chance that the polonium has to be stored in radioactive waste barrels, not inside of chemical tanks. And so that's not great because we don't want to put it in a radioactive waste barrel. If we do, it will just decay over time, which is not ideal. And so what we'll do is we'll break this. And instead, I will also break this, being very, very careful not to break the solar neutron activator because that would be very bad. Instead, though, what we can do is we can now kind of pivot over to actually making the supercritical phase shifter. So as the quest line suggests over here, we need 60 SPS casing, we need 6 SPS ports, we need 6, we only need 1, but we can make 6 for the quest completion of these supercharged coils, and then we need 100 reactor glass. Okay, so SPS, the supercritical casing here isn't too bad. We do, however, need more than 60 of it. It says 60 here, but then I believe it's also required for the pots as well. It is. Again, this wants us to make 6. I don't think 6 are necessary, but we'll do it for the quest, which means we need an extra 24 on top of the 60, so we need 84 SPS casing. These don't require any, that's fine. If we're going to get 84 SPS casing, we need to get 84 plutonium pellets. These require plutonium and water with fluorite in the PRC. And the plutonium is nuclear waste processed in a different manner. Okay, so we do need to get the isotopic centrifuge. Isotopic. Let me see if we can't make that. We definitely can. Fantastic. And then temporarily, let's go ahead. Let's put that down here. And then using our configurator, let's go ahead and disconnect this. So now everything, all the nuclear waste should go into here. So if I turn that back on, this should start to fill up. It does. Let's turn it off again temporarily. And then let's get another flux point, whack that down right about, I guess we'll put it on top like that. I don't think that works. Okay, never mind. Let's put it anywhere that's not on top. Let's put it down here. Perfect. And give it the old configuration with the flux configurator. Good stuff. It makes a horrendous sound. You can go to the muffling sound here, and you can go to whatever this is called, isotopic. If I type in ISO, we can mute that. We'll give it a little bit of volume just so we can remember what it sounds like. So we needed 84 of the SPS casing, which is 84 of these, which is 84 buckets of plutonium, which is actually quite a bit of nuclear waste. And so that is doing its thing. We, of course, do need to route that background into the PRC that we just used, so pressurized reaction chamber, this guy right here. And so we'll just do something like this. And we're kind of resetting up, I guess, here, the same system that we had a moment ago, but just instead of using the polonium, we're using the plutonium, which is fine. And so we'll probably get the same tank set up at the bottom of here as well to make this work. And of course, we can put in just a ton of fluorite. We could use an EMC link to put the fluorite in, but given that we only need like a stack and a half, I feel like doing it manually makes the most sense. And so I think really what we're going to have to do now is just get more fissile fuel. We can leave this on because it looks like it's fine. Again, making sure we don't hit shift. This number is going down. And now it's no longer going down. I was worried that it would keep going down, but it's not. So I think it's fine for us to just leave this here for a little while, whilst we head on up and look at getting more fissile fuel, which should be very straightforward. As we saw before, we can make more reprocessed fissile fuel fragments in the arc furnace with just one substrate, which is almost laughably cheap, especially because I'm pretty sure we should have more substrate over in one of these guys. Apparently, I'm right. Nice. Let's just whack that in to the arc furnace here, and that's going to make for us a bunch more. In fact, I believe you can do something like this and process a ton all at once in the arc furnace. And so long as this guy is good on power, which he is, we just get a ton of fuel, which is crazy. It's so easy. I love it. Normally, it takes so much work to get this amount of fissile fuel. Making it this easy, I'm very happy about it. And so, yeah, now we just need to keep this thing running and get ourselves enough plutonium. Okay, so we have 18 plutonium pellets. We're not quite at the 84 that we need just yet, but what I think I'm going to do is I think I'm going to go in here, I'm going to take out all of the fuel rods, and I'm going to place them back in with the gaps in between them, because I think that's what's causing a bit of an issue for us here, because you'll see that we're using 55 millibuckets per tick, but the max burn rate is way higher. But if we go anywhere really above 55, we start to overheat and damage the reactor, and if your damage gets to 100%, that's when the thing will start to melt down and the radiation will begin. I think the heat is getting so high so fast because I've so densely packed these fuel rods. And so I'm going to go in here. Also, I did, by the way, test this out, and this does work, and there's no limit on how fast this can delete the steam. And so this is kind of the perfect setup here. But right now, we've got no fuel in. Make sure there's no fuel when you do this. Also, make sure there's no nuclear waste as well. And so real quick, what I am going to do is just kind of break into here. That is going to delete the water in there, but that's fine. We've got unlimited water. I'm going to delete all of the fuel rods. I'm just going to place them down again, but in a zigzag pattern. And then we'll test out and see if that helps us when it comes to how much fissile fuel we can burn at once. All right, so we've got these down now in a crisscross pattern, and I did, by the way, make the infinity wand, which is just another star and 2 sticks. This basically is just like a creative building wand. It can put down a ton of blocks at a time, and it has no durability, making it much nicer than our previous ones. So we're going to go all the way up again to 1 block from the top, and then a nifty thing that you can do here that the Twitch chat reminds me of is that if you put an item in your offhand, you can then use the wand to build on top of a pre-existing structure. So basically, the wand put this block wherever there was fission fuel assemblies, and so you'll see that that's kind of perfectly, almost perfectly, done what we wanted it to do. It looks like, surprisingly, there's maybe a limit on the number that the wand can put down. I really thought it was going to do all of those, because it does say maximum is 1024 blocks, which we don't have down there. If I do it over here, is that going to work again? It's not going to work again because it's done it awkwardly, which is not ideal, but it did save us a bit of time and made it a little bit easier. But what I can do here, I guess, is, oh no, that's my bad. I've not used the wand previously correctly. The reason that didn't work is the fission fuel assemblies here are not all the way up to the top. That is indeed my bad. Let me get more of these. You got to make sure they're all in the right place, of course. If they're not, then it won't work. But that's fine. We can do this manually, and then we should be ready to start tinkering around with the numbers to see how much we can get and see if this is actually an upgrade over our previous setup in terms of the amount of fuel that we can burn at once. So back over here now, you'll see already the temperature is way lower despite the fact that we're still doing 55 millibuckets per tick. I think we could probably go up over 100 millibuckets. Our max burn rate now is much lower than before, but I think that's fine because before the max burn rate was not even usable. You'll see now that we're doing 100 and we're nowhere near the 1200 Kelvin that is like the maximum temperature there. So I think we could potentially even take this further. 200 might be too far. It's not. It's actually not. That's crazy. Let me try 250. Also fine. I think 300 might also be okay here. It is. We don't want to go over 1200. We could try 400 might push us over. It does. 400 is too far. Let's try 350. 350 is fine, which is good. That's a massive upgrade. Almost 7 times as much fissile fuel is being burned now than was previously. And it means now that we can take, a bunch of our fissile fuel and really burn through it nice and quickly, probably maybe faster than we can make it. Yeah, way faster than we can make it, which is causing a bit of a ping pong here in terms of the heat graph, but that's fine. That's perfect. We could, of course, look at making more of these chemical oxidizers. I don't think that you can make an oxidizing factory from Mechanism. You can't, unfortunately, but that's fine. And so now down here, this should be going really as fast as we can, and should be making, hopefully, these plutonium pellets much, much quicker. Again, 84 is the number that we're after. These are now thankfully coming in much faster than they were previously, and so it should hopefully only be a few more minutes for us to get all the required plutonium pellets. All right, and we actually went overboard a little bit. We got 95 of these plutonium pellets here, but I think that's gonna be fine. So let's see, can we make a bunch of this? I think the answer is definitely yes. We basically just need to turn all of our plutonium pellets into SPS casing. I don't think there's really another use for this, although I will check. No, we can turn it into reprocessed fissile fuel fragments, but that is entirely unnecessary. So let's just do something like that. And then from there, we can also go ahead and make 6 of these SPS ports. Again, you don't really need 6 if you're just building this to actually make antimatter, but for the quest here, we're going to make 6. And the same is true for the supercharged coil. I should have checked the recipe for this ahead of time, but I'm fairly certain that yes, it does not require any SPS casing, and it does have an EMC value, which makes it substantially easier for us to mass produce. Cool. Let's take at least 6 of those. And now we should be ready to set this thing up. So it doesn't really matter where we put it. I am fairly certain we're not going to need this mob farm again. But where do I want to put this thing? I'm probably going to put it somewhere in the middle. I was kind of thinking right on top of the mob farm right there. I could try and put it inside of the the sphere if we wanted to as well. That would work. We could also put it somewhere up at the top here because really we're just going to be teleporting the power up. Although we do have to get the polonium into it as well, and so it's probably going to make more sense for us to build it somewhere over here. And so yeah, I'm going to build it over here. I'm not going to get rid of the mob farm just yet, but I will go ahead and move some of these create shafts here to make some room for the supercritical phase shifter. So we do also need reactor glass. We've got quite a bit of it, but I'll get some more because I think we will need it, and I'm fairly certain that's the right kind of glass. It is indeed. So if memory serves me right, the supercritical phase shifter is kind of built like a small sphere in that I believe we have a 3x3 of reactor glass down like this. And then around this glass, we have the casing like this, I believe. And then you kind of just build this on all of the sides, if that makes sense. Essentially, that's the bottom layer. And then from there, we continue to do the same thing. So like imagining this is now the floor, we do build the same 3x3, like that. I say 3x3. We've always got that bit at the bottom, and then we build kind of the 3x3 with the bits around like that. So it's a 5x5 with the corners cut out, and we do that on all of the sides. So here is the 3x3, and then we have the side bits there. We have the side bits here, and we have the middle bits, I should say, here, not here. This one's not supposed to be there, I think, if I've got that right. And then from there, we also do the same with the casing. So we have the casing here, we have the casing here, and you'll see that this is the same shape that we had a second ago on the floor, but now it's kind of stood upright like this, right? And then we kind of just continue to do that all the way around. Of course, I built this in the wrong place. This is correct. This here is incorrect. Let me get rid of this bit here. I built it one too far forward. I'm not supposed to build it on the glass. I'm supposed to build it on the corner of the SPS casing. That's my bad. Get rid of this guy. So this is correct. Over here, we just have the same 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and 1, 2, 3, like that. And of course, you can build out this guy. We're going to have these here, 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 and here, like that. And then from there, we need some more of the glass because we're going to go and have this like that. And yeah, this should be right, I think. Let's do 1, 2, 3. And then we need glass on the top like that. We need glass on the side like that. And glass on the side like this. And then, of course, we fill it in like this with this here and this here. And then the exact same shape is actually formed on the top as well. So we are going to have to get rid of even more of the rotational shaft here. And again, we have kind of the edge bits followed by the 3x3 in the middle with more edge bits on the remaining sides. And you guessed it, the exact same shape goes down around like that. And so you just build that same shape, that being this shape here, on all 6 sides of the supercritical phase shifter. And you'll know that you've done it right if you have exactly 0 SPS casing left when you're finished, which hopefully, is going to be the case for us. Let me quickly rectify that. I could do with a faster pencil, to be honest, or a faster tool, something potentially like the atomic disassembler from Mechanism, because this pencil is actually pretty slow. It's not doing a lot for me. Have I put down the glass, though? I have not. So 1, 2, 3, like that. 1, 2, 3, like that. And I think now we're just missing the 2 corner pieces, which is perfect, because that's how many SPS casing we have left. So we'll do this here. We'll do this here. We do need more glass. That's fine. The glass is the easy bit. And then we have casing here and here. And you'll know you've done it right, of course, when it shows you the red particle effects. And so now this, I think, technically counts as a supercritical phase shifter. However, as you may have guessed, we do also want to put some of these ports into here. And the way this works is the ports go down, and then I believe we can place the charges, these supercharged coils, onto the port. So if I do this and this, that's going to allow us to provide power in. And then we also want to put another one of these down. I don't know if they have to go at the center, but I always build them at the center like this. And I think that one's going to allow us to pump the polonium in. And then, of course, we do need to be able to pump the polonium out. And then on top of that, you can put down even more of these coils and even more of the ports, of course, for those coils, which I guess we might as well do. We have the ports for it. Let's put one down here. Let's put one down up here. And then finally, let's also go ahead and put one down right about here. Perfect. And so now if we leave, this should be good to go. It is cool. And just like before, using the configurator, I believe that we can shift right click to change this to either input or output. So we'll set one of these to output. And that is, of course, where we're going to send the antimatter. For now, we'll send that just straight through to an ultimate tank, which is definitely overkill, but that is fine. And speaking of that, actually, I should probably make that the other side, because this is almost certainly going to want to be the side that receives polonium, because our polonium is going to be produced right down there. So let's quickly swap that to input. And let's make the other side here output. Cool. And we'll whack this down like so. And then from there, I don't know if we necessarily have to put the flux point onto the one that has the coil, but if we were to take a flux point and place it down right at the bottom here, which I think is right there, it is. And of course, right click that with our configurator. Ideally, that's going to be easier said than done if we get the extendo grip. Also, as per usual, F3 and A to reload the textures if the glass is bugging out, which it has a tendency to do. Let's do a quick one of those. Fantastic. We can take that extendo grip off again. And now that should be ready to receive power. We just need now to pump in some of the polonium. And for that, we need a lot of this ultimate pressurized tubing. You could also use the quantum entangler porters here. These would also work, I believe. But I'm actually not quite sure if you can use those to move radioactive elements, now that I think about it. So we need to get this up, ideally without touching any of the pre-existing pipework. So it's going to look bad, but I'm going to go across like this and then up like this. And then we're going to kind of zigzag back to the middle again to recenter it and just bring that all the way up to our supercritical phase shifter. Like that. Cool. And you'll see right away that we have power in there, and the polonium is being turned into antimatter. Right now, the energy input rate is 800,000 FE per tick. We can change that, again, with the extendo grip here, because it's quite far inside. Although, actually, chat did convince me to get the personal shrinking device out, so we can do this as well to get under here. This right now has a transfer limit of 800,000. We can bypass the limit, and now that's using 8 million FE per tick, and you'll see it's very quickly pulling all of that polonium out and turning it into antimatter, which should be being sent around to here. And it is. And with that, we have 4 millibuckets of antimatter. And don't forget, we need 1,000 millibuckets of antimatter to make 1 piece of antimatter, 1 single antimatter pellet. And then looking forward, I don't actually know how much antimatter we need. We might need a fair bit. I'm actually not entirely certain, but I guess for now, we just need to kind of get 1. And so what we can do, of course, is we can go ahead and put even more of the fissile fuel fragments into here. That's going to start making more polonium slowly but surely. But if you want 1,000 millibuckets of antimatter, that means that we need 1,000,000 millibuckets of polonium, because it's a 1,000 to 1, and we need 1,000 of these. So we need 1,000,000 millibuckets of polonium, and this also is a 10 to 1. So we need 10 million millibuckets of nuclear waste, which means we need 10 million millibuckets of fissile fuel. Each one of these gives us 2,000. And so if we do 10 million divided by 2,000, that's 5,000. We need 5,000 of these reprocessed fissile fragments, which divided by 64 means that we need just 78 actually substrate. If we can get 78 substrate, we can change that into 5,000 of the fissile fuel fragments, and then we can send those around into here to make 10 million millibuckets of fissile fuel, which we can then turn into 10 million millibuckets of nuclear waste. We can then turn those 10 million millibuckets of nuclear waste into 1 million millibuckets of polonium, and that 1 million millibuckets of polonium into 1,000 millibuckets of antimatter. And so I guess, let me go get more substrate cooking up on the surface, and we'll probably do like just a little setup with an item pipe and a chest. So we'll dump all of the reprocessed fissile fragments, actually maybe into a storage drawer, and then have them piped down into the chemical oxidizer, so that between now and the next episode, we can slowly but surely get working on our very first piece of antimatter. Also, chat is right here. I do need to reconnect up the solar neutron activator and disconnect the isotopic centrifuge, because right now we're just turning all of our nuclear waste into plutonium, when we actually want to turn it now into polonium. All right, so the substrate is super easy to make. I did put speed and energy upgrades into both of these machines, and so now we are able to make the substrate here very quickly with the biofuel, which is good. And we're also able to make, of course, the biofuel very easily with potatoes, which is also good. Up here, I've thrown a drawer down in front of the arc furnace so that it can receive all of the reprocessed fissile fuel. But as we saw a second ago, we do need to get 5,000 of these reprocessed fissile fragments, and a storage drawer by default can only hold 2,048. Thankfully, much like earlier in the playthrough when we made a storage downgrade, we can also make storage upgrades, the best being this tier 5 emerald storage upgrade, which increases the amount of capacity by 32 times the base value, taking us from 2,000 up to about 64,000. And so we should now be able to just slowly but surely pull all of these reprocessed fissile fragments out of here. It looks like they do get pulled out a little slowly. What we could do, if we didn't want to move them manually, I think a pipe would actually be more sensible here, because we do have, in fact, we've got the infinity pipe. We don't need to use the infinity pipe for this, but we've gone through the effort of making it. And so I feel like we might as well put it to good use, at least temporarily. Let's do this, and let's do that. That's going to basically immediately pull out anything that gets placed in there. We can put distribute inputs on, and I think if I do that, oh, there we go. You click it after you put them in. Perfect. Cool. And so that should get us way more than 5,000 of these fragments here, and we could get even more as well, which is good. And we could also look at automating this as well. It really depends on how much antimatter we need. I have a feeling we're going to need a fair bit more than just 1 antimatter to finish the peg, but we're going to have to take a look, and we're going to have to start once we've unlocked the next quest line here, which should be doable now that we have so much of this fissile fuel. So let me take this down. I'm hopeful that this won't actually take that long, given how much fissile fuel our reactor now burns through quite quickly. So let's put this here. Let's again put another item pipe down right underneath that. Again, we don't need anywhere near the ultimate pipe upgrade for this. It's very much so overkill, but we might as well do something like this, and like this, and like this. Cool. And hopefully, if we set the right here to input, like that, that's going to start to work. And of course, we can also do something like this. And then we can also do something like this. And then we can also do something like this. And then we can also do something like this. And then we can also do something like this. And then we can also do something like this. And then we can also do something like this. And then we can also do something like this. And then we can also do something like this. And then we can also do something like this. And then we can also do something like this. And then we can also do something like this. And then we can also do something like this. And then we can also do something like this. And then we can also do something like this. And then we can also do something like this. And then we can also do something like this. And then we can also do something like this. And then we can also do something like this. And then we can also do something like this. And then we can also do something like this. And then we can also do something like this. And then we can also do something like this. And then we can also do something like this. And then we can also do something like this. And then we can also do something like this. And then we can also do something like this. And then we can also do something like this. And then we can also do something like this. And then we can also do something like this. And then we like this to make the processing of the reprocessed fissile fragments faster, and thanks to the fact that this has a big buffer inside of it, that is fine. And so now we should be making polonium. We are. That polonium should be getting sent around and up to our supercritical phase shifter. It is, and here is where we could actually maybe produce a little bit more power. So there's a few things to fix. First things first, I don't think that earlier with my Evertide amulet that I filled up these top reactors. I didn't. Let me quickly get water into these reactors here. Perfect. And then from there, you'll see that each one of these isn't actually generating as much power as I thought. It says 188,000 RF per tick. That goes up to 210, I guess, 211. It's climbing up, but I really thought that one's doing 239. Not quite sure why that one's producing more power. That one says 262 now, 268. So maybe they are producing more power. It looks like that one's producing 309. And 330. I've got no idea why some of these are producing more power than others. We shouldn't have to turn off the bypass limit here. I guess turning off the bypass limit is going to let it tear through its buffer faster, because they do have a bit of a buffer in there. But once the buffer has been cleared, it shouldn't matter. Once the buffer's been cleared, they're not producing more than 800,000 between two reactors, so the 800,000 limit should be fine. But we'll go ahead and turn this off just to get that kind of short boost for the supercritical phase shifter. But then, of course, as we saw earlier, we could look at getting some of these watchers of flowing time and some more of these dark matter pedestals to make these just faster. If, for example, we put one of these down potentially kind of right in the middle. If I put that here, and again, that's a problem, because it just connects. Let me disconnect that. Let me disconnect that. Let me take that off, and let me put this here. F3B again to show the boundary. It looks like that does in fact hit all of the reactors. I immediately felt a little bit of lag there, which is quite something, but it looks like those are now producing close to 500,000 redstone flux per tick per reactor, which is very nice. And let's go and take a look at our supercritical phase shifter. I assume now that this is, running pretty fast. We're getting like 112 million RF per tick, which is pretty good. That's pretty good. How are we doing on antimatter? We have 110. We're about 10% of the way there on the antimatter. That's fine. Again, I think the limiting factor here is actually not the processing rate. I thought the limiting factor might be how fast this was processing it, but no, the limiting factor here is just the speed at which the reactor is capable of burning through the fissile fuel. We are slowly going down because this is slower than this is. Of course, we used the temporal pouch a second ago to make it faster. We could make this taller. Of course, this is nowhere near the 18 or 19 blocks tall that it could be, but I think for the most part, this is fine, and hopefully it won't take us too long from now to get the antimatter. All right, and about 13 minutes later, we're very close to our 1,000 millibuckets here. We're getting about 1 millibucket per second, and so now we just need to make a chemical crystallizer here, which does require some ingots of refined obsidian, which we actually don't have. Thankfully, they look pretty easy to make, although it is going to require a machine that we don't have yet, and that's the osmium compressor. This guy, thankfully, is going to slot quite nicely. Actually, let's go ahead and teach it, just so that we can grab more of them, although I'm almost 100% certain we're not going to need more than one of these. We'll throw that down right about here, and now we should be able to combine both refined obsidian dust and osmium ingots in here to make those refined obsidian ingots. So let's take this, let's take refined obsidian, let's do something like this, and let's of course make that just a tiny bit faster with our temporal pouch. Fantastic. Put that all away into here, and now if we try that one more time, there is our chemical oxidizer banked down at the supercritical phase shifter. We are at over 1,000 millibuckets of antimatter, and so if we were to set the front here to auto eject out to here, which it does automatically, fantastic, we could then grab a flux point from our transmutation tablet and just whack it down, of course, onto this guy. Boom and boom. Perfect. And that should, in theory, do the job. Now, I think right now all the power is going into the supercritical phase shifter, which is why we're running into issues here. If I set the priority of this to like 1, that should give this power. Yeah, because right now every single last bit of our power is going into here because this thing can really accept up to 400 million. And again, you can go over 400 million, but at that point you would need to put down more of those coils on more of the ports. But boom, we've done it, chat. That is kind of the end of the technological revolution quest line. There are more quests over here, but I don't really think that any of them are strictly necessary. There's just more machines, kind of like with some of the thermal expansion machines here, that we do not need to make. And so next time we'll come back and we can begin work on the final quest line here, the nanotech ultimatum. And this quest line starts with us trying to make the ultimate ingot, and then once we have it, we start working on these vibration mechanisms. This, by the way, is what the antimatter is used for, and then from there we can start to make some creative items and work towards completing the pack. This is the very end right here, which I don't think is going to be too far away, but of course, as per usual, that is a problem for future Isaac. For now, I'm going to go ahead and wrap up this episode of Sky Revolutions. There